Good day. Hello. Today is February the 26th. We are at the end of February, and next week is March, and we have more people back in school. That should be interesting. And so, yeah, let's try to continue and try to finish this unit before we push on and have our next test. So, Roman numeral 7. The Byzantine Empire lasted for several centuries after the death of the Western Roman Empire. The greatest of the Byzantine emperor was the guy Justinian, whose video I have showed you before we started this. And that's his reign, 1527 to 525. That's not right. Oh, it's 575. Correct. And his wife Theodora. The Nika Riots. Yeah, the Nika Riots were interesting. By the way, you notice the word Nika look familiar to anything? Yeah, that company that Tiger Woods, always the swoosh, pays a lot of money to wear. You see, the Nika riots occurred when there was a sporting event in Constantinople. I mean, it was a chariot race. And remember again that the chariot races of this era were very much like a combination of stock car racing on the one hand and roller derby on the other. I'm not kidding. And what they would do is, of course, you had the oval track. Actually, it was a long oval. And you had two teams of chariots. And what you did is, and this is where it becomes like roller derby, the object was for one team to get one of its members to cross the finish line ahead of any of the other members. And so, how do you do that? The way you do that is that you run interference, you block, and that's one of the reasons why these chariots often had the blades, the spinning blades on the wheels, like in Gladiator. And there were lots and you might imagine there were lots of wrecks, of course, which is why the crowd loved it. And there was one particular event, one game, I guess you'd call it, between the local team of Constantinople versus some visiting team, and the visitors won. And the people began rioting. I mean, they went crazy over the result of this event. And the rioting spilled out of the Colosseum, the Hippodrome, sorry, and into the streets and threatened basically even the imperial palace where Justinian lived, and with his wife Theodora. Now, Theodora was an interesting character. Theodora was like Justinian, Theodora was not from royalty. Justinian had fallen in love with Theodora. She was described as a burlesque performer, meaning she was a stripper. But didn't matter. Justinian fell in love with her, and so Theodora, Justinian is really unwound by all these riots going on, and he said, let's leave. He said, let's get out of town because these people are going to kill us. They're crazy. And Theodora bows her back and says, all right, you may leave if you wish. Said there are boats available down there. But for me, purple makes a good funeral shroud, meaning that she intended to die as empress or rule as empress. She wasn't going anywhere. And Justinian gets a backbone suddenly, and he then goes and he dispatches these riots with thousands of deaths on the case of the rioters. Now, the word Nika, though, that's interesting. It's too familiar. In Greek, and by the way, the Byzantines spoke Greek. The word Nika means victory. In fact, though, in the Latin, the cursive V, which is the first word of victory, is swoosh. Swoosh. Yeah, yeah. and you were wondering whether or not you should take this course. All right, so Justinian enhanced the city of Constantinople with his crowning achievement, the building of the Hagia Sophia. We've already seen that. This structure still stands today, is used as a temple of worship. Actually, it's a museum today, and is the world's greatest example of Romanesque architecture. So if you see it in a test, it's a Romanesque structure. It will remain the world's largest church for 600 years. Today, it is a museum. Yes. The interior, it had been a mosque. Yeah, it had been a mosque. Now it's a museum. The interior of the Hagia Sophia is decorated with lavish mosaics of stories and characters of the Bible and Christianity, which is odd because it's a mosque and they left those mosaics there, most of them. A mosaic, once again, if you didn't know, is a piece of art made by placing together thousands of pieces of colored tiles, often glass tiles. The most well-known preserved Christian art is located in the coastal Italian Adriatic city named Ravenna. Ravenna was easier to protect from the invasions than Rome and became the seat of power late in the Old Roman period. The earlier churches resembled the temples of Greece and Rome. These structures took on, there it is, the Romanesque style. Many Byzantine Eastern churches were segregated by sex as women sat upstairs. Now, while the early Christian church made great use of Greco-Roman innovations in building, decor, and architecture, they, the early Christian church, were very suspicious of classical forms of art because classical means Greek and Roman. And anything that was Greek and Roman, the Catholic Church, the Christian Church rather, said no. Greeks and Romans do bad things. Therefore, if your piece of art is Greek and Roman, it can't be in here, which were included, but not limited to, music, dance, and theater. In other words, in the early Christian church, there was no music, there was no dancing, and there was no theater. And that taboo will be placed for centuries. Early Christian music was almost entirely without any musical accompaniment. Early Christian hymns may have borrowed heavily from Jewish psalms and chants, such as the responsorial, where one singer would sing to another singer, and or the antiphonal, one chorus would sing to another chorus, and they would answer back. The Ambrosian chants, the Gregorian chant, you say, what are those? I don't know what those are. Everyone sings in the same monophonic, one voice, very disturbing. Yeah, that's what it is. Roman theater often depicted violent and sexual actions on stage, and therefore theater in the early Christian church, not happening. The rejection was so strong that baptism was even forbidden to actors, meaning that if you were an actor, it was believed you were going straight to hell. Christian rejection of works of art reached their peak during the Byzantine Iconoclasm. The Byzantine Christians debated so much over the worship of icons, meaning religious statues. If you go in a Roman Catholic Church, they have statues all over the place. Like, for example, the Pietà. Every Catholic church has a Pietà. Most of them have a statue of a saint. Many have a statue of the current pope. And they were called icons, religious symbols and paintings and mosaics and sculptures. So that Emperor Leo III blamed them for the army's loss to the invading Arabs. In 730 AD, he decreed that religious icons in churches be removed or destroyed. The Western world lives to this day very much in ignorance of the Islamic world, which it does to its own great peril. Islam was founded by a man named Muhammad, who lived from 570 to 630 AD. Make sure you know the three holy cities of Islam: Mecca, Medina, Jerusalem. And they're in that order: Mecca, Medina, Jerusalem. Mecca was where Muhammad was born, but when Muhammad was a young man and preaching his gospel, the people of Mecca didn't like him. They ran him out, so he fled in what is called the Hijrah to Medina. And while in Medina, he spent a few years there, got a bunch of followers, went back to Mecca, kicked butt, and took names. And yeah. And then the third most holy city is Jerusalem, the site from which, according to Muslim ideology, theology, Muhammad rode a great white horse off into heaven. The Shahada is the statement of profession of faith. And so, the 5 pillars of Islam, let's write them down, shall we? One is the Shahada. There is none but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. This is called the profession. All right. 2. Sorry. Almsgiving. What is that? Giving to the poor. At a rate of 2.5% of last year profit. 3. Prayer. 5 times daily in the direction of Mecca. 4. Fast during the month of Ramadan. And 5. Yes. The word Islam means surrender to God, who is Allah. What is the Hijrah? The Hijrah was the flight from Mecca to Medina. The Kaaba is a stone, a black onyx stone that it was believed that Abraham used to construct an altar upon which he was going to sacrifice Ishmael to God. That is a story that Jews, Christians, and Muslims disagree upon. Jews and Christians believe that Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac. Muslims believe he was going to sacrifice Ishmael. Central to the Islamic belief was the fact that all believers were equal before God and they were charged to treat each other with kindness and respect. The word jihad, I am taken out of there because too many people think of that when they think of Muslims. Same for mujahideen. Let's do that, shall we? And we cut. Yes. So, what is the Quran? The Quran is the book of Islam. It's divided into 114 surahs or chapters. It combines much of the teachings of the Hebrew and Christian text, even teaching that Jesus was a minor prophet. The fact of the matter is, in Islam, the second most important person, most prestigious person, is Jesus. In Muslim teaching, Jesus actually escapes the cross. To Muslims, the Quran was God's true revelation to his Prophet Muhammad and to his believers. All right. During the 8th and 9th centuries, while most of Western Europe was stumbling around the Dark Ages, the Islamic world represented the most scientific and enlightened cultures on the planet. That's true. In the 8th and 9th centuries, Europeans were like, burning witches. And Muslims, though, are making advances in science and learning and preserving Greek and Roman writings. In the early 800s, the Islamic world was ruled by Persian leaders called caliphs. The capital was in Baghdad, which is in Iraq now. capital held 1 million inhabitants, and the art of this period was a direct reflection of the Islamic faith. It would be useful to remember that since a strict interpretation of Islam holds that pictures of animals, objects, or other people is a form of idol worship, that Islamic art does not have pictures. You see, how can you have art without pictures? Well, I thought I showed you. Oh, I can show you. Islamic art without pictures, right there. Oh, yes, yes, yes. I forgot. Where did that go? Put that back up there. Islamic art without pictures, Mr. Horton. Quick access. Right there. Yes. This is an example. Islamic art without pictures. See geometric patterns, calligraphy from the Quran, etc., etc., etc. Thank you. A mosque, I'm sorry, arabesque, repeated writing of lines and shapes. What is a mosque? A mosque is a Muslim temple of worship. Who was Al-Jibra? Al-Jibra, you're going to love this. You're going to love this. Al-Jibra was the man who invented algebra. Yeah, yeah, not lying. Al-Razi wrote a medical canon, who actually had all sorts of cures. And I'm showing you all these things to show you that during this time, the Muslim world was ahead of the Christian world, much more civilized. In fact, they conquered Spain. Spain, because the Muslims conquered it in the 8th century, Spain never went through the Dark Ages like the rest of Europe did. He wrote a medicinal canon, actually describing smallpox systems. Ah, yes, the Dome of the Rock. I showed you pictures of that before. That's the point at which Muhammad rode a white horse into heaven. The medieval European world became, however, a divided place, with the Muslims holding the Middle East, North Africa, and continually trying to gain a foothold on the Balkan Peninsula. They got to Vienna twice before being thrown back in each time. The Christians held on to Northern, Eastern, and Western Europe. Except for Spain. And you know what? I think we're finished for the day. Yeah. Monday, I'm going to show you something that will be very instrumental in what we're learning. And then we'll talk about a test. Okay.